All right, everybody, get your engines fired up. It's time for Lights Out, Let's Chat.
Okay, this weekend changed things. Not just in Formula One, but across the entire ladder of the sport. Because in Montreal, we didn't just get one storyline. We got a domination breakout performance, a team rivalry starting to boil over, a race that completely flipped on its head, and a young driver proving they might be the future of Formula One. And honestly, this might go down as one of the most important weekends of the 2026 season. Because by the end of it, we're looking at a new title momentum, new rivalries, and maybe even a shift in power. So today, we're breaking it all down. F1 Academy's biggest weekend of the year, a dominant performance that might define the championship, and one of the most chaotic Canadian Grand Prix we've seen in years. Because if you thought this season was unpredictable before, well, Canada just made it even crazier. Let's start with F1 Academy, because this weekend in Montreal, it was one of the most important of the season. Here's why. We had 3 races instead of 2, more points, more strategy, and a lot more chaos. For my newer fans, normally F1 Academy runs race 1, race 2, but because Saudi Arabia got canceled, Montreal added an opening race. So now we had opening race, reverse grid, and feature race. Here's why these races matter. More chances to score points, more pressure on consistency, and less room for mistakes. And one driver handled that pressure better than anyone else. And that one driver was Alicia Palmowski. She dominated this weekend. And I don't mean won comfortably. I mean controlled, consistent, and untouchable. Let's talk about qualifying, because that's where this weekend was won. Of course, with the format change, fastest lap equals feature race pole, second fastest equals opening race pole, and then the top 8 reversed equals reverse grid. So, unlike normal weekends, you couldn't rely on one perfect lap. You needed multiple strong laps. Alicia took both poles, had the fastest overall pace, and she also looked calm from lap 1. And you're probably wondering, Michaela, why does this really matter? Well, in junior racing, drivers either overpush, which overheats their tires, or they underpush, which leave time on the table. Alicia, she had the perfect balance. And that control showed immediately in race 1. Lights out, and Alicia nails the start, controls the race, and disappears. She wins by 10 seconds, which is the largest margin in F1 Academy history. Now, for the newer fans, this is huge, because this is a spec series. Same car, same equipment. So, gaps like that come from driver performance. Now, here's what really separated the field. Tire management. Rear tires take the most stress in Montreal. Track zones, heavy braking exit. Alicia had smooth inputs, wasn't sliding, and she preserved her tires. Now, some of the other drivers in F1 Academy pushed too hard early, which basically means they fell off later through the race. But the next race completely flipped the script. And I am talking about the reverse grid race. Basically, top 8 from qualifying are flipped. Fast drivers start behind. Slow drivers start ahead, which means more overtakes, more pressure, more mistakes. Now with that, Matilda Pats wins the reverse grid. Why does this matter? Well, reverse grid wins aren't easy. They require defense, race awareness, and restart control. Now, of course, safety cars change everything. Safety car equals field bunches up, gap disappears, restarts become critical. Bad restart equals lose positions, lose momentum. Now, this was probably the best racing of the weekend. Dive bombs into turn 10, side-by-side chicanes, constant overtakes. So, from rising stars let's move to Formula One, and things only got crazier. Obviously, Friday started with a shock. Kimi Antonelli, fastest. George Russell, second. FP1 was a Mercedes 1-2. And this is surprising because Montreal favors straight line speed. Those are typically not usually Mercedes' strengths. So the big takeaway from FP1 was that Mercedes might be back. Then came in the first major drama of the weekend. That's right, I am talking about sprint qualifying. Fernando Alonso crashes. His session over. Now, with the results of sprint qualifying, Russell pole, Antonelli P2, and of course, Lando Norris P3. Mercedes has the fastest car of the weekend. Now, for the sprint race, it was mostly Russell versus Antonelli. Wheel to wheel, almost touched. Important concept though. Teammates can fight, but if they fight too much, it's a risk of a double did not finish. Then came in regular qualifying. Russell, of course, takes pole again, but McLaren, strong race pace. Ferrari was close behind. So, heading into Sunday, Mercedes, favorite, but vulnerable. And then, lights out. Norris launches from P3 and takes the lead. But he was starting on intermediate tires. Intermediate tires equals wet/damp tire. High risk, high reward. It worked, but only for a little bit. Of course, Mercedes fight back immediately. Antonelli versus Russell. They're aggressive, and they're racing pretty close. But of course, strategy takes over. However, there was a key issue. Rear tire issues. Team split. Mercedes equals pace, McLaren equals gamble, Ferrari equals flexible, Red Bull equals aggressive. And then, VCS appears, a virtual safety car. It basically slows the race without full reset. Of course, the winners of the virtual safety car is obviously Ferrari and Max Verstappen. Now, the loser, though, is Lando Norris. From race leader to struggling, he had some major issues happening. Tire wear, strategy, his pace just kept dropping. Now, up front, tension hits peak. Of course, Russell versus Antonelli, again, they just have a bigger risk. One crash equals a double DNF. At this point, Russell looks in control. But then, disaster hits. Russell retires from the lead. He did not finish the race. He ended up with no points, and that's a huge championship impact. Now, the cause for him retiring is likely a battery/power unit failure, which is honestly super brutal. He had a pole, he won sprint race, and he was in lead to win this race. And now he's finishing with 0 points. But of course, that opens the door for Antonelli. Antonelli wins again. He is now the title contender. He's consistent and he handles pressure. Now, of course, there were a few more battles happening throughout the race. Hamilton versus Verstappen for P2. There was multiple attacks, defensive driving, and tire management. Hamilton holds on, but the final result of the Montreal race, P1, Kimi Antonelli, P2, Lewis Hamilton, P3, Max Verstappen. Now, what did we learn from Canada? Well, Mercedes is back. Kimi Antonelli versus George Russell rivalry. Strategy still wins races. And DNFs change everything. This weekend had everything we've been looking for. Dominance, chaos, breakthroughs, and heartbreak. From F1 Academy, a future star emerging, to Formula One. A title fight heating up. Because in Formula One, you don't just win on speed. You win on consistency, control, and sometimes just surviving the chaos. Alright, everyone, that is this week's episode. I really appreciate all the love and support you have been showing me and my crew. I will have a special guest coming in to talk with you guys about pre-Monaco. So, Feel free to follow us on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and we'll see you next time. This was Lights Out, Let's Chat.
From Lights Out to the Checkered Flag, this has been Lights Out, Let's Chat podcast. We'll see you next time.